All right. Was good. We here. Views from the mountaintop. Though we accomplish things, there's always another mountain to climb. So I just wanted to say thanks for coming through.
Thanks
Got
for
Bryan
having me.
Taylor with me, and yeah, we're gonna get started. So first, I wanted to jump in and just kind of talk about some passions, basically. So, what are you passionate about, and when did you start to see those interests first bud?
Yeah, man, I want to start by saying thank you for having me. This is kind of like my first time doing anything like this, so it's cool to be able to share this, especially because we've known each other for so long. So I think what I'm passionate about mostly is growing. Um, like beyond that, I feel like there's a few different passions that I put that into, and I would say
Mm.
fashion, music, anything creative, really. So for the past 4 years, I would say since 2020, really been trying to build my brand. Started selling my first products in 2022, and at
Mm.
this point, um, really just trying to figure out a way to build a community around that. So I think through that, I found that my passions really are growing and sharing knowledge with others to boil it down as simple as I can.
Nice, and that's what we're about here. My what I envisioned for this is essentially, that person who's in high school, junior, senior, something like that. They're about to go to college. They don't know what they want to pursue really. So I kind of just want to get a huge amalgamation of people coming together, sharing their experience of what they do, how they learn to do it, how they're thriving right now, and how their work life balance is, pretty much how their actual lifestyle is, and in relation to what they do, so that people can get an example as well. Also, some folks who may be in early college and don't know what they want to do yet, and are trying to settle into it. So you mentioned fashion and music. So when did you first start getting into those?
Yeah, I think it's things that I've always been into, but I had an interesting journey. In high school, I actually went to a private school, and it was an all boys school where we had to wear a certain, we had a uniform, and so I
Hmm.
think in some ways there was a lot of things that were stifled, and I don't think I came into that creativity or that sense of understanding of self, especially in like self expression until I got to college, and so I think I was a little later in the game, but I've always been really into fashion. I remember I was in kindergarten and we had a uniform where I was going, and so we had to wear the same socks, the same like everything. And I remember I would wear red socks to school every day. And my mom was like, "You can't do that. Like I don't
Yeah.
know if you understand, but like part of the uniform and the rules of being a leader is you have to show up a certain way." But I always had to have something that made me different or make made me stand out. So I think it's always been in me. Um, and my love for music, the same thing. I think my pops really put that in me. So he would show me old school music, and I mean like old Johnny Cash, like old country songs. He was a big fan of Timbaland and like Magoo, Missy Elliott. So there was a lot of things that I feel like he really put me on at a young age. Um, and so I think, as I've grown, like around high school, I had a good friend who's really into music, huge producer out in Arizona, leading like the Get Free movement and creating his own digital cartoons. And I feel like I was really lost at this point in my life. And, I saw him really passionate about what he was into. And so I kind of leaned into that. And, I think all these forms of art are just a form of storytelling. So
Mhm.
regardless of if it's fashion, if it's music, if it's television, if it's books, spoken word, it's all a form of self-expression and storytelling. So I think it took me a long time to understand that and get to that point. But I think really at this point, I'm just trying to tell my story and my point of view through my fashion and through my music because I had a mentor about a year ago at my last job, and she said, "If you don't tell your story, somebody else will tell it for you." And
Mm.
that shit really hit me. I can't there was nothing that I could really say, and I had to sit with that for a while. I don't think I really understood what that meant. Um, yeah, and I could dig deeper a little bit, but I feel like coming from my upbringing is just so different. And I feel like we all have our own unique stories, but we live in the same world. So it's like we're consuming the same things, even if our situation at home is different. We're consuming the same thing. So it's like, how do I put that out and connect with others through that storytelling?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. You know, obviously we're all trying to express ourselves in one way or another, or just present ourselves in the world. To say that this is me, not any better or worse than you, but this is just something different. This is how I'm showing up in the world, and I think that's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing for you to dig a little bit deeper into that and discover that. And it's funny actually that you mentioned like in elementary school or kindergarten, like having to rock the red socks. Because my earliest memory, my earliest memory of like me going to school was when I first started dressing myself. And I remember the day before I started dressing myself, my mom put me in this all gray sweatsuit, and it was just like nothing. Like there's like nothing spectacular about it. And I remember the next day, um, I was like, "Hey, can I dress myself today?" And and my mom had dressed me up until this point, right? I'm in like kindergarten or something like that, and she's like, "What? You don't like how I dress you?" And I was like, "I'm not gonna lie. Like yesterday, you put me in the gray sweatsuit, and like that's not it." Like she was like, "I'm just trying to get you out the house quickly," and I was like, I get that, but like I gotta do me. You know what I'm saying? Like I gotta put some sauce on it. I gotta put something on it. Like I can't just be out here like that. So I thought that was hilarious, and I always remember that. Me and my mom still laugh about that to this day. About that, like, no, I still gotta go throw something on. And even my girl too, when we go places, she's like, "You getting dressed up for this?" I'm like, "I'm not even really getting dressed up. This is just how I do every day." Like
Exactly,
I'm coming
exactly.
like this every day.
Like, I'll go to the grocery store and put a whole ass fit on. My girl is like, "What are you doing?"
Exactly, exactly, bro. I got rings and all. I haven't even, what I'm saying. I left. I only went to like the 99 cent store today, grab some frames, and I'm chilling. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it is what it is.
Looking good, feeling good, bro. Like, if I walk out
Exactly.
the house feeling good, that's it. Like, the day is I'm ready. The day
Yeah.
is good.
That's big facts. Big facts, man. So how did you so you said you started to kind of dig a little bit deeper into these things in high school. How did you start to put that into practicality? Like what was the process of starting to get into fashion or get into music in a practical level to where you could make something that you could put out into the world?
Yeah, so I mentioned my friend earlier. He actually goes by the name Producers Unknown, and so after I think like the last 2 years of high school, I had a group of homies, and we were all like writing music, listening to spoken word. Like there was a lot of things that I feel like were just kind of like hinting at like, oh, okay, you really like this, and like let's dive deeper into it. So it was always like I love the music, I love listening to it, I love breaking it down, and I don't want to segue into the beef right now, but this Kendrick Drake shit is
Yeah.
it just I feel like I just really loved it. I love the aspect, the culture of it. And so the last 2 years of high school, um, he was really deep into it. He had a keyboard at his house. And so right
Mhm.
after we graduated, I damn near lived with him for like the whole summer, right before we went into college. And all we did every day was just produce music. He would come home, he was working like 12-hour shifts, and it was him and his older brother staying at this apartment in Sac. And
Mhm.
so he would just come home and we would whip something up, and he was showing me like how music is structured, how to actually write a verse, how to like, take a song. We would take like songs that were already hits and
Mhm.
he'd play the instrumental and be like, now try to find a different flow, like find your own flow in this. Like, don't
Mhm.
take what they did. Find what resonates with you or what makes
Yeah.
you comfortable, how you speak, how you share your story. So it was like, I think I just had that in my ear. And at a time where I was really looking for something to I guess like hold on to, because I lost my dad in high school. And so I feel like there was a lot of things that I was really struggling with at that time. And so he was
Mhm.
like, tell your story, like talk about who you are and use this as a
Yeah.
platform to really heal. And so, my cousin would really put me on the spoken word. And I think I was kind of mixing those two. It was like a meld of both of those, the aspect of music and storytelling, but also like this aspect of like how to put your emotions in it. And so I think that's really when the music started. Once I got to college, I was with a group of guys who that's all we did, especially my
Mhm.
freshman year. And, looking back, that's definitely how I failed out of college the first time, but, I think there was a lot of lessons in that, and I met some of my best friends at that time, so I wouldn't go back and I wouldn't do anything different, but I think it was just an avenue for all of us to, kinda come together. It was something that we all bonded over already, and, it was like, "How do I find my way in this world?" I think we all have skill sets, and sometimes it's like, I don't know what to do with that skill set. And so I think it's like, how do I take these things that I know how to do and I feel like I know how to do well and put them out, not necessarily for other people, just how do I do something with this? How do I find a way to share this or express, my inner thoughts and my deeper thoughts? And, that came from actually after I lost my dad, my mom put me in this like art bereavement class. And so through that class, it was like, taking these feelings of grief and this pain and this hurt and creating an outcome, like a physical outcome from that. So I remember
Mm,
we did like a mask. We made like a clay mask. And it was like, what do you feel like you look like right now? And so we
mm,
made this mask. And I remember it was like I made a realistic version of my face. And then it kind of had like the lips stitched up, and it was like that was a representation of how I was feeling at that time. I didn't
mm,
really wanna talk about things. I didn't really wanna share how I felt, but it was like me going through that process, I actually was. I was sharing those deeper feelings or, that feeling of, like, pain and grief and not wanting to share that or not as a man, especially not knowing how to share that with others. So I think it was kind of a culmination of things at that time, but I think that kinda got me to where I am today for sure.
nice. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you sharing that story about your father, and then the bereavement art classes, and everything like that. That's really powerful. I think a lot of people don't really know how to heal, and I think art can be a very cathartic outlet for you, whether you're doing that just strumming on the guitar and you don't even know how to play, or just throwing some notes on the keyboard and you don't even know what you're doing, just getting that emotion out there, in some way that you could get that as an external instead of keeping that, inside. So I think that's a beautiful thing, man. Thank you for sharing that. And then, so as you were talking about the different avenues that you were taking and the different things that you were pursuing, in my mind, that just seemed very brave. I think a lot of people play it safe. Um, and, just for myself speaking, like I wanted to pursue an art path, but had a lot of reservations around that. So then went to a traditional university, to do what I thought was like a guaranteed thing, which it was, but at the same time, it wasn't really fulfilling. And then pivoting to do activities and pursue things that are more artistic in the long run. So you kind of dove right into that. What do you think internally gave you that bravery to pursue those passions initially, instead of playing it safe, or sticking to a script that someone else may have laid out for you, but charting your own path instead?
Yeah, man, I gotta be really honest. I feel like it was my mom, and
Mm,
I can't. I think that's the first step. That's the first step because it takes self confidence. It takes homies around you, like your inner circle. But I think she was the first one that was always like, "You can do whatever you want. Any
mm,
goal is realistic, and life is a game, and you just have to know how to play it." And I think those things didn't really set in for a long time, but I told you I damn near lived with my homie after I graduated high school for like 3 months,
hmm.
right before I went to college.
Yeah.
And it was like she was so understanding of that. We would come back to my house, we would bring all the gear, we would make music until like 2 a.m. This is at her spot. Like she didn't have to let us
Hmm.
do this. And I think it was always she was always pushing us, like, and I think there's a different aspect of it where she was like, "You can do what you love, but you can also have a full-time job that supports you." And so
Hmm.
I think that's where my biggest, like, confidence in this comes from, because I actually work full-time in HR. So I'm a
Hmm.
recruiter, I've been in higher education for, like, 7 years, and now I'm working in K through 12. And so I work HR day to day, and then I come home and I sew. So I think there's a lot of aspects of like you can do the things that you need to do as an adult, as a young man or as a man in this world, but you can also do the things that you want to do. So it was like set yourself up for success in both ways. Because if
Yeah.
you put all your time and energy into your passions, but you don't have a job, there's really no way that you can support yourself or sustain yourself long term. And I think I'm coming to this place in, I guess, in this journey where I'm realizing how do I do both but not burn myself out?
Mm.
And so I think, not to deviate from your question, I think my mom is definitely the biggest advocate of the reason I'm here and putting that battery in my back and the confidence. But I think, now at this point in my journey, I'm turning 29 this year. I think it's just how do I do these things sustainably? So I've been trying to build a brand for 2 years, and it's like, what do I do um, to not, I want to invest all my time and money into this, but realistically, what are the expectations? Because I think I'm a person who pushes myself to the limits. And
Mm.
I'm getting to the point where it's like those limits will make you crack.
Yeah.
And so I think I recently moved from LA to the Bay. So now I'm in the city. And I think during that transition, like 3 months before I left, all I did was sew. All I did was sew. Like I, I didn't have any time. Like I was up until midnight. We would have friends at the crib. We're entertaining and like everybody's there watching a movie and I'm sewing. Like I'm watching a movie. Like I'm still here. Like we're all in the
Yeah.
same space. But
Yeah.
it was like I think I don't want to say compartmentalizing, but finding ways to focus. So when it's this time, I'm with my homies. We focus on this. We have fun. But then when it's time to work, I focus.
Mm.
I'm not thinking about this, and that. Like, I think it's really just finding a way to channel that energy because
Mm.
I don't think I was doing that and I was burning myself out. So it's like at the end of it, you can have all the confidence, you can have all the, you know, the wherewithal, the knowledge, but how do you build a sustainable foundation for you to do both at the same time? So I think I'm definitely still on that journey. I don't want to say I have it all figured out, but I think, without my mom, I wouldn't have had the confidence. And without the practice and putting those hours in, I wouldn't have the understanding that I do now of how to actually sustain that.
Yeah, absolutely. He was really locking in, whether it was being with the homie at his spot day in and day out, and just grinding the midnight oil away, or whether it was you stitching it up when when things needed to get done. So you threw a lot of gems in there, and a lot of different aspects of the fashion and the design work. So I want to rewind a little bit and just talk about that process, kind of chronologically, of how you went from learning how to design and get that together to where you are today, and then we'll go into the branding and all that stuff too. So can you walk me through that process? How did you learn how to practically design clothes? How did you learn how to stitch, put these garments together, source fabric, all that good stuff? So you can kind of go chronologically from there if you want to start at the beginning of how you learned.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the initial spark was, I've kind of always had this feeling, but I think the moment I knew that this was something that I had to do, not something that I wanted to do, but had to do, is when
Mm.
everybody had to sit down during COVID. I feel like when March 2020 happened, there was a lot of changes. I realized that one thing that I really love every day is getting dressed. Like, one thing I really love is putting a fit on, and not
Mm.
being able to go anywhere and do that, I think it really changed my outlook and my understanding of myself and, what I
Yeah.
really like to do, and so I think it all started there. Um, at that same time, um, my girl had got me a sewing machine. So it was, like, very basic, and so I didn't know anything, and
Yeah.
the first thing that I did was just try to stitch a tote bag, and I don't know
Mm.
where that idea came from or what I really wanted to do with that or, where I wanted to take it, but I'm the type of person I think I'm gonna dive in head first, and then as I'm in the water, I'm like, okay, let's make adjustments. How do I find out a better way to do this? Okay, that didn't work. Let's take this route. Okay, let's deviate here. Or that did work, but this, it's really like fine tuning as I'm doing it. And so
Mm,
after that tote bag, it was like, okay, uh, you know, nobody's really going anywhere, nothing is really happening. So it's like, okay, well, now I have this simple idea. How do I keep trying to recreate this but make it better? So then it was
mm,
like YouTube University where I'm just watching videos, trying to find different ways to hone in on those skills and just a basic understanding. So I think a lot of it really in the beginning was me just thirsty for knowledge. Like I
yeah.
said in the beginning, I'm all about growth. I'm all about learning. I'm all about elevating to that next step. And so I think a lot of it just takes a drive. Like I want to know about this. I don't want to know
Mm,
about this because somebody told me I need to know about this. I want to hone in on my craft. I want to be able to create something better than what I did last time. And so I really just started there. It was like this feeling of, okay, I love to get dressed. I love to express myself. Okay, but how do I make that creative? How do I add my own aspect of creation on top of that? And so I think probably a year into the pandemic, I started taking classes at a community college out in LA. And so that's really where it all kind of began. And I got like better foundational knowledge of what I wanted to do. So I took a
mm,
few different classes like digital design and fashion. I took it was like essentially like not pattern making, but it was more of like, actually creating garments. So throughout the course of the
mhm,
class, we created a tote bag, we created a skirt, we created a child shirt, child shorts, um, and so it really was like putting those skills into practical use.
mhm,
But I think what really made me once I got into that class, it was like, "Oh, I kinda already know some of these things."
yeah.
Like I'm relearning or reinforcing the things that I felt like I had already learned. And so it was kinda crazy because it's like I'm coming into this thing that I feel like is new, and, this is after I've graduated. I already have my bachelor's. So I've been in
Mhm,
my career for about 3 to 4 years, and now I'm going back and taking classes. But I mean, that's just doubling down. Like I told you, it really is about growth and learning. So it was like
mhm,
taking that next step into, okay, you really like this. I can really see something coming of this. And so I think it was, it took a little bit of time. Um, so I think in total, I took about 4 classes. So it was the digital design, pattern making, actual garment creation. And then there was another one where it was like introduction to fashion. So it was like
oh,
learning
okay.
about the history of fashion from the beginning, the understanding that luxury items were actually sold to kings and queens in the beginning, where
Yeah,
that
yeah.
fabric came from, the different types of fabrics that can be used. So it was really just kind of doubling down on that. And it was like, okay, I can actually see myself making my own garments and things that I can sell to people. Because I think
Mhm,
one thing you can learn a lot in the classroom, but you have to have good taste. I just gotta be
yeah.
honest. You have to know what you like, and sometimes it's like that I think there's a market for anything, but once you know what you like and you create that, it's like, okay, if I like it, somebody else has to like it. Maybe it's
Mhm,
only 2 or 3 people that like it, but somebody else has to like it. And so I think that's kind of the mindset that I was operating under is like, okay, as long as I keep creating things that I like and that I wanna wear and that I feel comfortable in and that I feel like express me, then I
yeah.
I can't really you can't really go wrong. Because if I'm happy with it, regardless of how many sell, like that's success to me. And so I
Mhm,
think as I continue to build my brand and determine, like what the next steps are and how to create a community around it and how to really rally people around this idea of like wearing things that make you feel comfortable, I think it all starts with knowing yourself and what you want to wear and how you
mhm,
want to express yourself. So as long as you're confident in what you're putting out, I don't think there really is any losing. Maybe you only sell 3, but that's not a loss to me. 3 people wanted something that I made. Like, that's a blessing, you know what I mean?
yeah.
So I think it really is a lot about mindset in the end for me, um, in this journey of trying to build a brand is more about, like, helping others express themselves the way they want to in the process.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, who's not to say that, you sell three now, but later on down the line, your brand gets a little bit more established. People are still going in the archives of what you got, and you still got the clothes. Like they're not gonna go bad. You know what I'm saying? They're not expiring. Like you still got that product for people. So they can still jump in there and get get the garments later on. So it's never a issue. I was listening to Paul McCartney. No,
From the
John
Beatles?
Mayer. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why that name came to mind. But I was listening to John Mayer. I was listening to John Mayer interview, and he was talking about how earlier in his career he would measure success on like album sales and different accolades and different stuff like that. But now what he measures his success on is just like finishing a product that he's very proud of. Like he's like, if I finish the product and I'm proud of it, like the commercial success is somewhat irrelevant to me because I know that I put my best in this and I made a product that's worthy, of the world and being out there. So and if you do that and you put that type of passion and that type of love into your products, people it's going to resonate with people regardless. Maybe not now. Everything has its time, so maybe not now. You maybe just be before your time. So it just kind of depends. But as long as you're putting that passion into your products and bringing that to the forefront, then you can't really lose.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, I definitely man, I didn't know John Mayer was so wise because that's real. I think,
I know, yeah.
yeah, like, I heard Will Smith talk about the same thing. He was in an interview with Speedy, and he was talking about in
Yeah.
the beginning when he was, starting to get into movies and acting, it was like he was checking the box office sales every 10 minutes. And it was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, did we make this amount of money? Did we hit this threshold? And if we didn't, then we're not successful." But it's like
Yeah.
you're always gonna be chasing that if that's what you're looking for. And I
Mhm.
think that's the that's the biggest factor of me having, like, a full-time job already. I'm not banking on this being successful for me to be able to eat,
Mhm.
because if I was, I think I would feel a different way. But the
Yeah, to get
fact
that added
that
pressure to it.
I love it, there's no added pressure.
Mhm.
There's no added anything, It's like
Mhm.
I do this because I have the ability to do it, and I feel like I need to put this out there so other people can enjoy it and express themselves too. So I think, that aspect of it, I think my mom kinda putting that in my ear really helped me get to this point, because if not, then I probably would be basing it on sales and how many
Mhm.
customers I have or how many likes I have or how many views on this reel, how many followers, but you could go down that rabbit hole all day. But
Yeah. And
I'm
all those
comfortable.
things at the end of the day is kind of out of your control. So you can do everything right, you could do everything great. Algorithm might change tomorrow. What I'm saying? They may start putting 3-word comments over longer comments and devaluing likes and the things might change and you may not be hitting like you used to. So you just really never know. So it's like as long as you stick to the product, then you have a formula that really is going to be long standing because then you're going to be someone who puts out quality and it's not about riding trends or getting clickbait or seeing what's just about to blow up right now, but you're going to have that longevity in the game.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the
Yeah,
goal.
absolutely. I was listening to this other dude who does fitness, and he was like, "Yeah, people talk about getting in shape." He's like, he's like, the goal actually is not to get in shape. The goal is to stay in shape. So, you
Mm,
want to build a lifestyle around something that you can sustain for the rest of your life. You don't want to get a 6 pack for a summer and then you're out of shape the rest of your life just so that you can have a photo op real quick. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the point? What's the point of that? Like, so you should
that's
build
real.
a
Yeah,
you should build a
that's real.
lifestyle around what you can sustain and not just grind yourself into the dirt for something that you're not going to be able to push long term. And then, so your first drop was the bucket hats, fire bucket hats. Amazing fabric selection as well on those. Really really cool floral print that you had. What was the kind of idea or inspiration behind that? And can you talk a little bit about the technical aspect about that as well? The way they're reversible and have a different type of fabric on the outside versus the inside.
Yeah, so I'll start with just saying I think the inspiration really was how can I be more sustainable? So, like I said, I started to build this brand in 2020, and I think a lot of our minds and hearts changed in the way that we consume things and want things in the world. I find a lot of people are like shopping more vintage and
Mm,
finding things that are older. And so through that process, there was this fabric that I bought in the fashion district in LA, and so that was one of the first bucket hats that I ever created. And I remember putting it together, and it was like this amalgamation because when you take a fabric or like a bolt of fabric and you cut it into these pieces that then become a garment, it's
mm,
kind of like you're creating this patchwork. Like it comes into something that's different than what you had in the beginning. Your
mm,
initial like 'cause I'm looking at it as a canvas. So you have this fabric, before you cut it, it's like a canvas that's already been painted on. So imagine cutting that up and then sewing it back together in a different way with these shapes, certain shapes, because
mm,
garments are made in specific pieces. So you have like the arm, you have the front body piece, you have the collar. These are all different pieces that you have to cut. And I think
mm.
once I put it together, I was like, "Yo, like I could do something with this." Like
Yeah.
it hit my heart so deep that I was like, I know somebody else will like this. And so through that, I kind of found the brand and the company that printed this fabric, and I kind of went into a rabbit hole, honestly. And so these fabrics are I'm not gonna tell you where they're from, but it's
Mm.
a specific brand. They print all these fabrics essentially
Okay,
from
so you
like
got it from one you got all these from one company.
yeah, so the
Okay,
fabrics
interesting.
but they're vintage, so I think that's the thing that's different about it. So
Mhm.
they're
It has
from
that feel to it.
some of them are from, like, the '70s, '80s, '90s, early 2000s, and so I'm finding these on, like, eBay, Etsy, and I think the hard part about it is that they're in small quantities, because people
Mm.
probably purchased these, like, 30 years ago, and they've been
Yeah.
sitting in somebody's house. So I think initially that's how, um kinda how I started sourcing these fabrics specifically, and so they're primarily floral prints, and they're actually built for upholstery. So they used to be couches, chairs, um, pieces of dining tables, and so it actually gave me this really nostalgic feel. It kinda felt like I was wearing, like, my auntie's couch,
Yeah.
like from, like, the early '90s or something, and it was like, I think it kinda like I mentioned earlier, it's like even though we all live a different life, we all live in this world together and we're consuming similar items. And it's like if this resonates with me and it feels like my auntie's couch, like it probably feels like somebody else's grandma's couch, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so it's like you resonate with it in your own way. And I think that's the beautiful part about storytelling is, I tell my story and you take the bits and pieces that resonate with you and you can relate to it in your own way. And so not to deviate from where I got the fabrics, but that's kind of like the thought process that was behind it. So one, I wanted to be sustainable with it. So they're all vintage fabrics from the '70s up until now. And then two, it was like this nostalgic feel of like, how do I bring back this feeling of, being at my auntie's house or being at my grandma's house or, being somewhere that holds like a space and time. It's like you can go into somewhere that's postmodern and it's like it feels postmodern. So it's like
Mm.
bringing these ideas of like architecture or furniture into fashion. And
Yeah.
so for a long time, it was like I was looking for all of these fabrics and I had come into this amalgamation of like 30 different, 30 different, same brand, but like 30 different types of fabrics. So, because they're in such small quantities, though, I was only able to make like one bucket hat, two bucket hats, one tote
Mhm.
bag. And so I think that's kind of where it was like, oh, I can see this being something, because as
Yeah.
a kid, I remember the worst feeling. Like I'm telling you, I've always been into fashion. In middle school, I remember I showed up to school and homie had the same shirt on as me. And I was like, this can never happen again. This
No!
can never happen
Yeah.
again. And so like, what? So there's this aspect of my brand of like these things that I've always felt growing up and like
Mhm.
wearing my own clothes and my own self-expression of like not wanting something that everybody else had. So it's like you can have a Zay bucket hat, but it's still one of one. Everything
Mhm.
about it is unique because of the way, like I mentioned earlier, so when you cut it up, when you cut that full canvas or that full fabric into pieces, no 2 pieces are gonna be the same.
Mm.
And so I think the cool part about the bucket hats is, a bucket hat is actually comprised of, like, 2 different hats. So I
Yeah.
essentially make 2 hats, and then I sew them together inside out. So, it was like these aspects of like, okay, you can take this hat and you can flip it inside out, and now it's the same fabric, but a whole new hat. Like,
Mhm.
there's different pieces of the fabric that are gonna be showing. Maybe there's
Yeah.
more green from this flower, or there's more aspects of, like, gold flakes from this, this aspect of the fabric. So it was like, okay, like, you're finding uniqueness in every little bit of it. So even if you don't like one side of it, if you like the fabric, you can flip it inside out, it's a whole new hat.
Mm.
And,
Yeah, that's
it gave
fire.
me
That's real couture right there.
yeah. And I think it gave me the idea, like, okay, but through this process, it was like I was getting a better understanding of how garments are put together. So, like, when you put a lining in a jacket, all that stuff matters. All those details
Mm.
matter. And so even like the stitches, like a few of my bucket hats are jean. So it's like on the bottom of all jeans, if you really look at your pants, there's like a gold stitch. That's what they
Mhm.
hem the bottom of the pant leg with. So it was like some of these have, like gold stitches. It'll be like one gold stitch here, and then I'll stitch it up with different like say the hat is black. It'll be like
Mhm.
all black and then one gold stitch at the bottom. Where it kind of like you get the feeling of like, oh, I'm wearing jeans, but like it's a
Mhm.
hat. So I'm trying to like take these pieces and these small details from things that we already consume in everyday life and things you
Yeah.
might not really notice, but every single one is different because I may not do that for all the other hats. I may just do that for that one. Really
Mhm.
it's like a feeling like once I'm putting it together, I kind of have this like, oh, okay, do this, do this. And I think one thing that my art has really taught me or, self-expression through art is trust your gut.
Yeah.
Trust your own knowledge and your own understanding of this, whatever it is, whatever your field is, music or painting or, creating rugs, whatever it is, trust your vision and trust your gut. I think the this is, my one of my own philosophies. I think overthinking is the death of an artist.
Mm.
As an artist, as soon as you start overthinking it, you're done. Whatever
Yeah.
your product is, whether it's music, whether it's fashion, it's done. Because as soon
Absolutely.
as you start overthinking, the process of self-expression halts. I think
Mm.
there's like this wall that you hit once you start overthinking it, like, oh, will other people like this? Oh, does this actually look good? Oh, will they really spend this amount of money on a bucket hat?
Mm.
So I think, there's these things and these philosophies that I've kind of built as I go through this process. But I think really you know, finding these fabrics um, was really like a feeling of nostalgia, self-expression, and trusting that gut and that instinct. Because it was like, I like this. It reminds me of something from my childhood. Okay, how do we go full force with that? It was
Mm.
like it was as simple as that.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel like when you start getting all these other blocks and walls, like you were mentioning, in front of you, you get away from the core, the essence of the art that you were trying to make. You can't overthink it. And in the wise words of Kenny Beats, dots, man, don't overthink shit. so so
Hmm.
you just gotta take it and strip it down to its purest form. A lot of times, yeah, even when I'm making music, like sometimes I'll be, writing something out or thinking about what it is, and it's like the first line in a sequence is probably the best one because that's the essence of the thought, and then we can kind of build off that again. So I may write a 4 bar, delete three, like come with another 4 bar, delete three, and then go from that sequence just because we're hitting the core of it every first time. That's where the soul of it is, and then everything else is kind of getting in the way of that sometimes. So it just depends. But yeah, as an artist, definitely gotta get to the core of it, the spirit of whatever we're trying to create and bring that into the world. So
Yeah.
just pivoting a little bit, you're talking about stitching and some hem work and different stuff that you're doing for folks. So, what came about making or making that service available to people, and how's that going for you?
Yeah, it's good. I think, we kind of talked about this
Hmm.
before, but I think the aspect of me starting to hem people's stuff was okay, I'm not outputting the stuff that I want to quick enough. I recently moved to a new city, trying to establish myself again, get my bread up again. And there's a lot of things that I feel like I wanted to foundationally get prepared before I really go full force. And I do plan to in like July, to the rest of the year. But um, I think really what it was I was in the office and I had some friends and they were talking about, oh, like they were trying to convince, uh, one of my coworkers that like, they were like, you need to get your stuff hemmed. Like
Hmm.
you will feel so much better in all of your clothes if you get your stuff hemmed.
Hmm.
And it was like I was listening in on this conversation, and I'm like, I have these skills, and I feel like I feel like they're being underutilized. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I think it was just this moment. I'm sitting there and I'm listening, and I'm like, wow, I could do that. I could do that for people. I could do that for my friends. I could
Yeah.
do that for my community. And I think one of the biggest things I'm trying to do around my brand is build a community. Regardless of how many products I sell or what kind of output I have, I want to build a community of people who are understand how they want to express themselves through what they wear. And so I'm
Hmm.
like, the best way to do that is to take stuff that they already have and just make it fit them better. Because I
Yeah.
already do that for myself. And I feel like when I started this journey in 2020 and I started hemming my own clothes, it was like I created this wardrobe that I know that I will have for the rest of my life. Like I'm
Yeah.
getting pieces and things where it's like I know this is something that I'm gonna have forever. And I'm probably gonna pass this down to my kids. And it was like, how do I take that same feeling that I'm feeling and then share that with my community and have them it's like and at that same time, it's an aspect of branding because you're like a walking billboard at that point.
Yeah.
You know, people are like, "Oh, I really love those pants." Yeah. Oh, well, I got them hemmed by my homie, and boom, 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 and
Yeah.
that's a potential customer right there. And I don't want to look at it that way, but when you're trying to create a business, those are things that you have to think about: the
Yeah.
marketing, the
Absolutely.
branding, how to get your name out there. Because social media is a great tool, but it costs a lot of money. You really have to be
Hmm.
able to invest in marketing, in campaigns, and photo shoots. You have to have the products already to be able to do things like that. So I think in this journey, it was like, well, how do I continue to get my name out there, get my brand out there, connect with others, build a community, and at the same time be able to, express myself and use the skills that I have. So I think that's kind of my thought process and my journey through it. But I want to tap into what we were talking about before, and I think really it's being open to the idea of what the universe has to offer at that time. Because
Hmm.
I could have heard that conversation. I'm at work. Like this really has nothing to
Yeah.
do with what I'm doing at work. I could have just
Yeah.
kept doing what I was doing. But that same day, something was like, make a post right now. And I think
Yeah.
one thing in my life that I'm trying to be better at is being timely. Because you can have all these skills, you can have all the knowledge, all the opportunities, but it's about timeliness. It was like take that moment, capitalize on it right now because we don't have that many more. Or you never know how many more you have. Life goes quick, like I'm turning 29 this year. So I think it was like take this moment, capitalize on it, and really have this understanding of like, okay, this is what people are asking for in the world right now. It was it's kind of like when you do a market survey. Well, they're like, we have three different type of Skittles that we want to come out with. So we have 100 people test them. Okay, out of these 100 people, 76 really liked this color. And it's like, so it's kind of like it's my perspective of like a market survey. Like, okay,
Hmm.
not everybody might need bucket hats at this time. Like I just moved to the city. It's cold as hell here.
Yeah.
Really, I need to start making fleeces and coats and, like, some heavy pants, and so it
Yeah.
was like, I know that already, but it was like, what can I do in the meantime to use those skills that I have? Because I think that's really what it's about. Like, I read this quote, um, that Young Thug said, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he was pretty much like, I'm not the best at this, but
Mm,
it was like he was like, I have a skill set and I utilize that skill set to reach an audience.
mm,
And so it kind of took me back, as a musician, sometimes you don't think that people are really thinking about those things, like the
yeah.
marketing aspect of it, the branding aspect of it. Like they're not just sitting in the studio making songs, they're building a brand, but the
Yeah.
brand is them. So it was like he has this understanding that he is that brand, he has a skill set, and how do I utilize that skill set to bring my family up, bring my community up, and bring myself up? It's not in a selfish way, but I want us all to rise together through this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. And I mean, anybody that listens to Thug music, they understand that brand and the
Mhm,
power of that brand. But
mm,
man, a lot of good things that you talked about right there. Um, First, just the pivoting aspect of not being discouraged at all. I think a lot of times when people are in a position where life throws things at them and they're moving around and they may not have the time or the ability to pursue the specific projects that they want to pursue, but let's see how I can still fit in the work. Let's see how I can still perfect the craft at a different level. Let's see if I can bring up this element of my game because I'm not able to utilize this element. So it's like, okay, I'm not able to make full garments for myself right now because I'm transitioning, I'm moving. We got a lot of moving parts, but hey, I do got a little bit of time to do some stitch work for people, some hem work for people. Like, let me get into that. And also, we had talked about this before, but just in the artist's way, the book, one of the best concepts that I took from the book was this concept of synchronicity. And it's like, the universe is going to give you those conversations or put you in a place to succeed essentially as long as you have a positive outlook on things. So as long as you're open to being fed where you need to go, then you'll be given that path essentially. And so it's like you being in the office, you're not thinking about anything but doing your job at that time. But then they're talking about hem work and the way that makes people feel and the emotions associated with that. And then it's like boom, light bulb. Okay, now I got that idea, and your mind is just running with that so quickly. And you're like, okay, I could do this with it. I could do this with it. There's so many positive aspects that I can do it not only for myself, but for other people in the way that it's going to make them feel and the way it's going to make them look. So it's a win-win for both situations, and it's an amazing thing when you get put in that position. I think that's also another jolt of inspiration. Doing the same thing day in and day out, and then you get this new idea and it kind of gets you going, gets you excited about the projects and everything, and gives you that drive to keep pushing. So that's amazing, man. All the best, and everybody come get your hymns by my man. But I want to circle back on the brand. So the brand is it's called Zay. Is that correct? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah,
Hey.
Zay. Yep.
Oh, okay, okay, gotcha. Okay, gotcha. For sure. So, do you want to talk about what Zay stands for, what the idea behind that was, and how you brought that together to the forefront?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there was a lot of in the beginning it took a lot of thinking.
Mm,
Before you really start creating a brand, it was like, well, what do I want to say with this brand? Because it's
mm,
the same in music. Like I want to create a song, but well, what am I really trying to say with this? And I'll kind of take a step back. So my brand is called Zay. Zay actually means the gift of life in Swahili, and it's
mm,
actually my dog's name too. And so around that same time, I had just gotten my dog, and I think there was a lot of aspects of um, really that's what I want to share with people through my brand is the gift of life. And so I think that's why I'm so big on creating community because that's really where we all thrive. I think when they take us out of that community and put us in these family units and these households, they're separating that. and there's a lot of things that come with that, but really I want to bring that back together in a way that we can kind of feel and move forward. And so I remember I sat down and there was a book I read. It may have been The Artist's Way, but they essentially were like, if you take this idea of what you want to create, and it was called 202020. Um, I forgot what book it was, but essentially what you do is write down like 20 ideas of like what you want to stand on
Mm,
for that brand. And so I wrote down these ideas. It was like community, man for others, um, international. So it's like I want this to be international, but I also want influences from other places. I don't want this to
mm,
just be this Western ideal of this European ideals. I want to kind of take it a step further because that doesn't just represent me.
yeah.
Ideas of like, um, like how to. I think really like breaking down like masculinity and what that means and self-expression through masculinity. I'm not saying like, you need to be wearing like a skirt or a dress, but how do you take what the modern day man, it's really like my take on what the modern day man would wear.
Mhm.
The modern day man steps out of the house, what would he look like? And I
Yeah.
don't want to pigeonhole my brand to just men, because I think especially in our time now, there's a lot of um, different ways for people to express themselves. And so, it's like, but the idea of masculinity, how do we take that, break that down, and reimagine it in 2024? What would that look like? And so I think, really it was like taking this idea of the gift of life, um, wanting to share that with others, but breaking down every little aspect of what I wanted to share in that with others.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really where I started. That was like the foundation of it. Before I designed anything, before I created anything, it was like, what is your story going to be and how do you want to tell it? And I think it gives me I think as a creative, you can get stuck sometimes. If you're a writer, you hit writer's block or, you like whatever it is, you hit those walls. And I think creating this list, it kind of gave me like a foundation to never hit that wall because it's like, okay, my brand or I make a t-shirt, it's going this way. I'm pushing the boundaries of masculinity and what a man might wear. It might be a little more cropped. It might be a little bit
Mhm.
more see-through. It might be a little bit more form-fitting. And there's different ways to express that. And then but I'm not pigeonholing myself because it's like,
Mm,
okay, now I might take a step back and I want to take in like the way international clothes are made, different cuts, different seams. There's like different seams that are actually placed on women's clothing because usually they're more lightweight.
mhm,
So things like silk or like taffeta. Um, there's a seam. It's called a French seam, where essentially you're hiding it. You're like tucking it back in, and you don't
mhm.
really see
Okay.
that you don't see it on men's clothes very often. So it's like
Yeah.
taking these aspects and these small details and these things from women's clothing and adding those back into men's clothing. And but in a different way, in a way that like I said, if I like it and I feel comfortable wearing it, I know that somebody else is gonna like this and feel comfortable wearing it. And that doesn't
Yeah.
have to be 1,000 people or 10,000 people. It's just like, how do we take this idea and not have to pigeonhole ourselves into one area? Where it's
Mhm.
like if my brand has stars on it, and that's all I do is slap stars on a hoodie, slap stars on a pair of pants, slap stars on some shoes. Like that's cool, but like what's the message? Where are you
Yeah.
going with that? And after a while, you're gonna have put stars on everything already. There's only so many times you can do that before people are like, okay, I already get it. I already
Yeah.
get what you're trying to share with us or what your message is. And I think, brands like Off-White or Denim Tears do a really good job at that, where they
Mhm.
they do it, but they don't overdo it. Where it's like
Yeah. A
it's
fear of God.
branded. Fear of God
Mhm.
too. It's branded, it's recognizable. We understand what your message is, but it's not overdone.
Mhm. Yeah. I love those subtle brands. But we talked about a lot, spanned across a lot of topics today. But as we close up, I just want to see if there's anything that you want to promote, any projects that you got coming up. Anything, definitely let us know what the social media is so folks can follow you, follow the brand, and everything like that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So if you guys want to tap in, learn a little bit more about my brand and our journey, really trying to step into adding myself into the brand as well. But go and follow us on Instagram, Zay Design Studios. So it's ZAE Design Studios. Um, yeah, and really that's all I want to say. I feel like that this has been a long time coming. I love the
Yeah.
opportunity to connect with you, bro. I feel like we've known each other for a long time. And so this is this is exactly what I mean by bringing the community in and finding different ways to connect with people and sharing that story. So I appreciate you having me today, man.
Yeah, absolutely. This is views from the mountaintop, first episode, and the idea behind that name is that we climb many mountaintops in our lives, go through many journeys in our lives, but there's always more. There's always more to climb, and that is such the essence of life, and the zest and zeal that we get from pursuing our passions and these different projects and stuff. So views from the mountaintop. I see you've reached a couple yourself, and there's still more to come. So I just appreciate you for keep grinding and doing the first episode. So I appreciate you. I'm going to put your information in the show notes, and all the links and all that good stuff at the bottom. But yeah, appreciate you, man. And until next time, thanks again.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.